Hey, Arlen, you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. All right.
Awesome.
So I've been taking a look at it. I think it might be helpful actually for me to share my screen during this part if we're going to record it, especially, because
Sure.
I'm going to go through and just tell you some notes I had on it, and then some things that I think will have you work on.
Cool.
Okay. So here I have um, the scene. And one thing you're actually going to want to do, which I noticed, and I think I don't know if it was a mistake on our part or on Kevin's part or somewhere. If you actually, the first thing going to want to do is set your filter, your light, your shadow filter quality to medium instead of high. You might notice on yours that some of the sort of areas around your lights are a little bit boxy, and
Right.
there's some sort of fighting in some of the shadow areas,
Hmm.
that actually will go away if you turn it down just a little bit. So to do that, in your main assets part of your navigator, and yours is going to look different because I've been using this project for a while. It's got a lot of stuff in it. But
Hmm.
in the settings folder, if you go in there, there should be an HD render pipeline asset. It's got the icon with the big HD on it. And in there, rendering is the top tab. Right below that is lighting. And so you're just going to want to go down to shadows. It may or may not already be open. And you're going to want to go down to filtering quality. And yours is going to be set to high by default. You want to set it to medium, which is
Okay.
actually the quality setting we have it running in the visualizer. So that way what you're working with is going to be consistent with the final product. It's also just like a lot more cost effective, and in some cases the difference in quality is really minimal. There's a lot more tweaking to get it. Like the potential to have it look better is there, but there's a lot more tweaking involved. And for the sake of performance and quality, we just keep it on medium. And
Cool.
it might be that the project defaulted to that when we created it, just as a Unity thing. But your all your shaders are going to need to recompile. So once you set it to medium, your viewport might go black for a few minutes, or everything might turn blue. But while that's happening on your end, I'll just go through here and show you some stuff to sort of look at. So I think the placement of the lights is good, and the sort of which ones you chose to have shadows on is good.
Mhm.
Like I noticed these ones out here, they don't, and obviously that's good because there isn't really much that needs to cast a shadow. But you picked the one right in front of the fireplace to have shadows on, and of course that is casting a shadow, and I think that's good as well because you would expect to see a shadow, under the ridge of the fireplace and against the wall. I did notice maybe it was just the light placeholder was a little low here.
Yeah, that was like how it was. I didn't know if I should move it. I was like kind of scared too.
Oh yeah, that's fine. You'll just want to make sure if something in the like Revit comes through and it's a little weird, you'll just want to make sure that if you replace it or you're doing something and it still looks weird, just make it not look weird. That's like kind of vague advice, but you know what I mean? Like any
Mhm.
sort of free floating light, a customer would look at that and notice that that's a bit off. So anytime something like that happens, it's totally fine to just move it up. And you really just need to move the object itself. The placement of the light itself is just fine.
Cool.
Um, the only one I would suggest is maybe this one here in the hall. Is maybe we turn the shadows on there because that sort of darkens. It casts into here. It sort of darkens the under cabinet shadows, and it adds just a little bit more depth. It adds a little bit of a shadow under the ridge of the island. And this is the real nuanced part. Like knowing where to put shadows on is kind of like you do it by eye just to see what sort of adds to the scene and what doesn't.
Cool.
So, um,
I had a question about the reflection probes and actually
yeah.
those two lights outside, but I read on the thing that so just a thin layer for the floor, correct? Like one reflection probe has to be placed a very thin layer on the floor, and then one above kind of the island. Did I place those correctly?
I think you placed the one. Actually, where is the
Oh,
island?
the other one's like above. It's like above the ceiling a little bit.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the I was gonna say the placement of the probe object, like this probe is okay. It probably doesn't need to encapsulate the entire house. I guess maybe I should clarify that. Is it really just needs to encapsulate the immediate kitchen area, and it probably actually shouldn't reach the floor. But two things about reflection probes, if you're not used to them, and I think I'm seeing this here with the floor, because this floor doesn't really look like it's being affected by your probe. And that might be because it's too thin, but let's see. There you go. So the probe is there to sort of do that, because the floors will automatically, and they'll sort of get this overt sheen to them,
Mm,
because they're reflecting the sky. So Unity's reflective materials by default, they just reflect the skybox unless a probe is there to project like captured data or custom data onto the object within the volume. So the purpose of this probe is to sort of capture the interior lighting and project that onto the floor, and that creates a much more like natural, realistic looking surface light dissipation. So you had it a good size for the floor. It looked like you maybe needed to lower, because all I did was put it into position. Yeah, about here.
cool.
Um, Now, as for the other one, it definitely probably doesn't need to go all the way through the ceiling, but let's see here. Let's move it down to about here. And we'll move I guess the bottom, probably, actually, the bottom ends at a good spot. It's right above the floor. It's like right in line with this trim here. Um, Now the one thing is it has a very wide fade out range. So you can see there's sort of an inner box and an outer box.
Mm,
That the space between this is the gradual fade distance. So to edit that, you use the second little icon here, modify the influence volume, and then it
mm,
shows you the handles become, the square part of the handle is on the inner box now, and it shows you a line of the distance to the outer box. And so if you make it all the way out, that means that the reflective area just sharply sort of ends. If you move it in a little bit, it means it's going to dissipate over that space.
mm.
But I'm going to bring it in. Just oops.
Should
I'm
I
going to
keep
bring.
the distance between those two lines still pretty far, or is there any like situation where we would need to like do it sharply, like completely?
Probably not completely, but you probably want it to be fairly thin. So like if I move it here on the fridge, you can see this sort of blue area. That's because it's just starting, it's outside of the probe area. It's just starting to reflect the sky. You probably want it to be, I don't know, just a little bit fuzzy, probably like here. And the bigger the boxes, the like more that's noticeable. So just keep that in mind. But then we really only need it to probably cover this area here up to like behind the fridge and out to the island, and then probably inside here as well. So, and I might actually lower it just a little bit. Oops, the volume, because you can see the bottom of the fridge is kind of bluish, and that's how you'll know that it's reflecting the outside. So I'm just going to move that down. So now it goes down to about the bottom of the feet of the fridge. Um, and then I'm going to just do something here. And I'm going to move maybe the capture area, because now the capture area is way down there because of the way we moved it around. And I'm going to put the capture sphere sort of right above the island.
Mm.
And I'm going to turn it off and turn it back on. And now we're getting, actually, I'm probably going to lower it and do it again. So now we're getting sort of, you can see the fridge there, and these subtle reflections, they might not even be that noticeable in the visualizer, depending on the countertop type and other things like that. But and they don't always have to be perfect. Sometimes they'll break. But that's generally how we want to handle the reflection probes in the kitchen. So yeah, so just one for the sort of immediate kitchen area, generally above the island or just sort of in the center of the space, and then the one for the floor Just have to make sure it's just right in the right spot, because we don't want it to go up enough that it's starting to affect any of these appliances. And we don't really, I guess it doesn't matter if it goes too far down, because what's below the floor isn't going to get seen anyways, but it should just be thin enough to generally sort of cover the floor. Then I guess we'll look at these lights because that's what you said next. Now, the thing about this is you probably don't need this many.
Yeah, that's
Maybe
what I thought.
yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
probably revise the documentation a little bit just to clarify a few things. But generally speaking, we only really need one. Now, what we would do is just
Make it
grab
wider.
its, yeah.
Yeah, I redid it while I was working on it again right now, and I was like, you know what? Because I thought, I don't know why. I guess I should have just thought about just like making it bigger, honestly.
That's okay. And a few things we're gonna do too, because it's kind of hard to. Sorry, I had to sneeze there. It's gonna reflection or not reflection. These spotlights are a little bit goofy. I know I have a line in the documentation about their, what do you call it? It's like the clipping distance. So, and we're also going to make sure that it is angled so that it just sort of covers the windows, because it's going to like sort of clip through the roof part, but we're going to still want it to get these windows. Let's see. And all that is going to be down here in the shadows. And we're going to press this little gear button on the right in the inspector to show advanced options. So, let's see. We want to make sure the near plane is as close as it can be. And let's see, normal bias. Yep, normal bias set to 0 is going to fix a lot of that issue. I think the slope scale bias can be 0.2. I think I have that in the documentation. And we can actually take the, no wait, not the dimmer. We want to take the, which one is it? I guess we can probably just take the actual intensity down a bit. Probably more than 1, 2, and no, let's make it, yeah, you know what, 5 is actually not bad. And one other thing we can do, and I don't know if I put this in here. Did I say to? No, I do have it in the image. I don't think I said explicitly in writing though, and I should add that. For these particular lights, we actually want to double the shadow resolution because they tend to be really blurry and kind of, they don't look that accurate, or that good, unless we turn up the shadow resolution a little bit. See, because I think before it wasn't even getting this crossbar, whereas now we can see both parts of the shadow. Yeah, so see, it was really, um, just sort of looked like two horizontal planes before. Now, if we turn that back up to 1024, it gets, the shadow resolution is high enough to capture that sort of middle bar as well. Now this house, this is probably about as good as we can do with that one in this house, because there's really only 2 windows. And I mean, realistically, we could probably just bring it in and do it on the 1, because we can see outside here that the sun is not angled in such a way where that much light would reach this far in, to the covered porch.
Mm.
Um, so we can probably just get away with doing it on this window. I mean, we could maybe, but with the way that the sun is in these scenes, this one is iffy. I would say for realism, you could just do the left, but if the client wants it on both, you could easily do both. I'll leave it at both for now, and you can leave it at both on yours. Now, the only other thing I wanted to cover was, some of the intensity and radius settings. So I think overall the scene is maybe a little bit dim, but it's not bad. And I think I had you set these when we were first talking about it all to 50 and 2. Um, but if you look at the documentation, there's sort of stuff on how you should adjust those based on where they are. So
Mhm.
these are probably all set to be 100 would probably be fine, but we're going to turn their radius up to 3. So they're all going to get a bit brighter. Same here. Let's make that 100. And see, because these lights are spread out, they're gonna be, you want they're to sort of fill more for more space. So they're gonna, each individual light is gonna be a little brighter. Over like here, these lights are in closer proximity to one another, so their intensity is probably in a decent spot. And that's sort of what I think I put in the documentation is, generally speaking, if lights are in a, concentrated in certain radiuses of one another, you can put, there's some setting suggestions. Let's see. Now these ones are okay. I would maybe, no, that's probably too much. They're probably fine as they are. But these ones out here, I turn them up to 100. I think actually I'm not even going to mess with their radius. I think I'm just going to take these ones that are out here and make them 100. And this one here, I might give a shadow as well, because it just sort of adds the sort of shadow we see on the inner part of the sort of outcropping where the fridge is, and it gives another like under island sort of countertop shadow, which I think is good. In fact, and to sort of trade off, I might turn shadows off on the one over the stairs. Now, I don't think we've taken enough of a performance hit where, just by turning on 2 more sets of shadows that it's going to make a difference. But I think if we had to get rid of any, we could probably get rid of those and it wouldn't be the most noticeable thing, especially since I don't believe the camera is going to be aimed in this direction much. But over here, I think will be a good spot. Now, I had this one. I did change it to 100. Yep. Okay. So now the only other thing, and I don't know if this is going to be a big deal or not, and this sort of depends on the client as well. I believe these are a test kitchen, or it's a kitchen that we're using as a sales thing, which means that the company didn't really tell us to do this. We're doing it to show them so we can try to sell them on the product. A lot of times when we do under cabinet lighting, we do it the full length of the cabinets, but we do sort of also, if there's a hood or if there's like an over range light, I'll show you how to do that here as well. I'm just gonna move this up a little bit so it's directly under there. That is probably fine. It probably comes out a little bit too much, so I'm gonna just make it so it's almost the exact size of the things here. And I think the intensity is fine. Actually, let's see. Let's make it 1 here. And then we're going to do that. We're going to copy that over. And we're going to put it on this side. And when you're using an area light, it's sort of like the size is sort of like the radius setting on a point light, in that the larger the setting, the more area over which a light effect is being dissipated. So as you make it smaller, you can see that the light is stronger at its source, whereas when you make it bigger. So when you adjust the size of an area light, I made it a little smaller, which means I'm going to actually have to bring down its intensity as well to sort of match that of the other light. So the other one is 1. I made it probably, this is probably about half the length of this area of cabinets. So setting it to 0.5 is probably appropriate. Now, the other thing is if there is like an under hood or under microwave in this case, because a lot of times when there's an overhood microwave like this, it's sort of, sometimes there's a fan built underneath it. I don't think there is in this case. But we would use actually a spotlight. So I'm just going to copy that first light. I'm going to move it down a little bit. I'm going to change it from an area light under the general tab in the inspector to a spotlight. And I'm going to keep it in its sort of conic shape. Unlike, the ones outside, we made it into a box. This one we're going to keep as a cone, and we're going to make its intensity a lot higher so that you can sort of see that little shape. We're going to make its range a lot shorter though. And then we're going to widen it out. And then we're also going to take its inner angle, which is a secondary thing. We're going to put that out to about the halfway point. And then actually I'm going to lower the intensity so that it's not quite so much. I think I'm gonna send you a pack of materials at some point because I don't think you have these. Because I put one on the floor that was maybe a little bit more representative
Mhm.
of what we'd want. So I'm gonna send you that. I'm probably gonna send you a backsplash here because I'm gonna put a real backsplash on these. And I don't know if I included in the documentation to make these because I don't think these were included. Were these here already, or did you go ahead and make those?
The backsplashes, they I just put on materials. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're already made.
Okay, cool. Because early on they did not have them. They look like their UVs are wrong though, but that's
Yeah, I was
okay.
gonna. Yeah, it just looks like it repeats. And I didn't think it looked right either, so I was like, but I just threw it on there because I didn't really.
Yeah. So there, that is an issue for modeling. I'll make note of that. Just that sometimes when they get the backsplash, they must not have done right. So I might fix that real quick. Come on. Pro Builder Eyes. So what I'm gonna do to sort of fix these in a real easy way, I think, is I'm gonna unwrap them by selecting them and converting them to auto. And I'm gonna scroll down here and select world space. And now they are, you can see their UVs are scattered about quite, uh, far.
Mhm.
Um, the way that we use UVs is converted from Revit's geometry, and it is more adherent to world space than like texture space. So we actually 99% of the time they end up way outside of the little sample square at 1 1, and that's fine because we're just using repeated textures on all of them pretty much. But if you convert or unwrap a mesh in world space using the auto unwrapping tool inside the UV editor, on a lot of objects, it'll just sort of be the way it's supposed to. Oh, well, this one might need to be rotated, but their sizing is correct now. So this is a
Cool.
like a 4 by 6 tile backsplash. Um, let's see. The only other thing about backsplashes actually that I should point out is a lot of times the client will want the backsplashes to begin at like a one like a tile, like the very bottom is like the start of a row of tiles. And the only
Mhm.
way to really do that is to position them at 1 1 inside the sample square, which in this case it just looks like going and sticking it here to, it doesn't have to be exact, just that the bottom corners kind of match up.
Mhm.
And I'm going to do that with this one as well. I think for this case, I'll grab that chunk that's, oh, well, it looks like that one's a bit goofy anyways, but now it's interesting that these are all consistent because they're in world space, but they're not, and they are like, oh no, they're not quite consistent. So actually, let me do this. Let me convert to manual. Let's do box. Then I might have to scale it, but because now the shape is consistent. As you can see, it runs across these seams without any breakage,
Mhm.
um, but it's too big. It should match the one over there. So this was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiles. Oh wait, one, two. I don't actually, hold on. So this one starts there. This, okay, so this one is actually modeled wrong altogether because what we offer usually is an option between what's called a side splash, which is this little row, usually just shares the countertop material, and a backsplash. But when the backsplash is active, it's supposed to be on the left here where you can see it comes down to the countertop. Here on the right side, it was modeled where, for whatever reason, it stops where the side splash or counter splash would be. So we're gonna do something real quick. That's wrong one. We're gonna grab these edges. I'm gonna move it down. So now that it's covering that area, and then I'm gonna box unwrap it again and Oh, did I not have the right face selected? Or the right edge selected? Yeah, I didn't have the front edge. I had a different edge. So now we're going to re-unwrap all that. And as you can see, when you unwrap using the box projection tool, it unwraps it proportionate to its shape in 3D space. You can see this one was raised up, so it became unwrapped in a proportionate sort of 2D way. All right, there we go. And I'm going to scale it again. Might be about that size. We'll check it in a moment. And align these corners here. Probably make it a little smaller, which makes the tiles appear, or it make it, the UVs bigger, makes the pattern appear smaller. I think this is about right then, because that's about 5. Yep, there's a row right above the lip, and then there's 4 there. So okay, so that's the backsplash. That's good. Now, what else was there? I don't know if there was anything else, because we fixed the backsplash. We covered the under cabinet lighting, and what I had done just before I noticed the backsplash was messed up was created this light, which would go above a range or under a hood or whatever. But your appliances look good. Your placement of these handles look good. Oh yeah, one thing, and it's kind of iffy. I think I note in the documentation that it's sort of on a case by case basis. I might add it just to say that it's mandatory, or something we'll want to do to some degree in every case. But what we're gonna do is add a ceiling light real quick, because even though it's not really realistic, like if you look at the ceiling of wherever you are right now, there's probably a lot of light variation.
Mm.
I mean, that's because that's how shadows work. But clients will ask that the light, the ceiling, be sort of illuminated in a more consistent manner than what is probably realistic, but it helps them, visualize colors and stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an area light that covers the ceiling, just so we can sort of add that blanket light to it. And let me scroll all the way up, because I think I'm probably not gonna, well, actually, it doesn't matter. I was gonna either copy a pre-existing one or just create a new one, but I think I'm just gonna create a new one. And I'm gonna call it ceiling light. Ooh, that's the wrong key. There we go. And these never need shadows really. I'm gonna make sure it's in the right base. Oh, the other thing is, when you exported this, you did call your package like a specific thing, but I noticed it was still called the
Mm.
default. The scene itself was still called default. But just remember to always change the
Mm.
names of those after you get them in your scene, because if I had another scene that maybe I had imported and didn't change the name of, and it was still default, on importing this, it would overwrite that scene. Or if when you go to import another scene in the future, if it's called default on import, it'll overwrite this scene for you. So
I
make
see what
sure
you're
to
saying.
always,
Yeah.
yeah, make sure to change those when you get the chance. Um,
So I just have to save the scene and just rename it, right? And that should be good. Like it won't
Yeah,
hurt.
so save scene, then go to select scene asset. Because if you don't save the latest version of the scene before renaming it, it's going to reload the scene to its last save when you do rename it.
Okay.
Because after you rename it, it doesn't exist in that state anymore under that name. So Unity has to reload it under the new name, but it's going to reload it under the last saved state that it was in.
Okay. And I'm just gonna rename it what I had on Azure, just
Yeah,
to keep
that's
consistent.
totally fine. So for this ceiling light, it's going to appear really bright at first, but we're probably going to actually have to make it pretty bright, um, because once we spread it out, or once we stretch it out to the total area of the ceiling, and you really want to be careful about exactly how high, because with these area lights, it's going to cause a sharp sort of edge when it hits the wall. But if it's at the right height, you won't notice it. So like this is probably fine. Yeah, because that's almost exactly at level with the ceiling. It's just a little bit under. So now we're gonna move that out. Okay, so now it's covering all of the relevant ceiling that we're going to want it covered. It's actually still pretty bright, so I'm actually going to take it down. We want to still be able to see some light variation, but not so much. Like if I disable it, yeah, like they'll say like, oh, these corners look too dark or some, stuff like that. They really kind of just want it semi-consistent out to the edges. So this is probably good. This is 70. Let me see what 50 looks like. 50 is probably good in this case. And that might vary a little bit depending on exactly how bright it is, or exactly what size you drag it out to be. But it's bright enough that the ceiling does look pretty bright. Actually, I might even make it 60, but it doesn't wash out all of the shadows, because then we can still see some of these shadows. And I think those are still important to have. They're not so dark that anyone, I think, will think they look out of place. Um, so I think in this case, then, this one is pretty much good to go. Now, one thing I don't think I covered in the interior lighting setup document is, oh wait, did we have another meeting after this? Oh, we did have a sprint planning thing, or no, that's a stand-up. Sorry. We have a, are we on this one?
I am not.
You're not on that one. So we'll wrap this up. But the only other thing is with the outside, and it sort of varies. This house is on like an upper part, so with the way that like things are placed outside, I'm not sure if it's gonna matter that much. Um, I think it's okay, the way it is, but just to be safe as well, what you can do is under the base object, there should be, actually, I'm just gonna search for it. There should be a terrain in here somewhere. So yeah, so there's a terrain. I'm gonna turn it on. It looks like its shader needs to compile. It also looks like it's really messed up. Sometimes the automatically generated terrains are like that. Now the thing is, I don't think we're gonna need to mess with it at all, because we really, as long as the terrain isn't clipping through, this part of the interior, doesn't matter too much. But what we are gonna do is just paint the grass on it real quick, which of course it's gonna autofill. So let that do that. And I guess we might want to raise it up a little bit as well, or at least take our sculpting tool here, set height to, so that we don't see a gap between the two. And in this case, I think it's going to be fine. Sometimes we put a big area light to sort of illuminate this grass. The way that our exterior versus interior setup kind of causes this like garish, uh, sort of messed up. I mean, it almost appears glitchy, but it looks better in the visualizer. The editor just handles it a little weird. Um, but sometimes you do want to turn on the terrain out here so that there's grass. If the camera ever gets placed someplace, like say here, they might complain that you can see, a big hole in the ground or something like that. But aside from that, I think we're good on this front. Like, I think that those were all the notes I had. Just a few about placement and intensity. I think you made some good calls about where the shadows were going to be. The only thing we really had to add was the ceiling light. Other than that, it was just adjusting these probes a little bit. And overall, pretty good. Um, I'll probably tell Joe to send you another one then, because I think yeah, you can, after you've made some changes, you can send me this one again if you want.
Sure.
And I'll take another look at it just to verify, but I think you're probably ready for the next one.
Cool. Sorry, I know you gotta go. The last thing, like because I asked Ryan, and I do believe this project is going to be shown. I think you were saying like at the customer, just to like show off the hardware, and so I think yeah, this scene is going to be up there. Do I need to add any other assets like chairs or anything, or is it just kind of like good
Um,
the
well,
way?
what you can do, so I'll explain that real quick, because I don't know if they're gonna want it on or not. I think it's weird that they gave you one that is gonna go up for a customer sales demo. I thought they were, I thought maybe they'd um
Yeah.
wait a little bit longer for that, but that's okay. If they want staging, and that's what we call it, I don't know what, I don't necessarily know why, but we call it staging. What you're gonna want to do is create an empty in your scene, call that empty staging furniture, just like this. No no underscores between them, but they are both capitalized and they both have to be spelled just like that for them to work in the catalog. Um, and then and then I'm actually going to move that object up to the top of my hierarchy. It's just easier to take care of that way. Um, and then in your project, if you search for staging, you should have several objects pop up. Now, there's going to be one called den staging. And if you drag that into your scene, it's going to be a whole set here. It looks like in this case, it was kind of inverted. Or it was set up for like a specific house a long time ago. All you're going to need to do is just sort of grab some of these individual elements and rearrange them. Um, thing is, this is iffy because like they didn't tell us. We don't really know how they would want this home staged. Um, some places always have their TV on the fireplace mantle. But I don't know if the fireplace is like a thing you can turn on or off. If that's the case, we don't want to do that. Um, but what we're gonna do, and you can delete individual elements of these as well if you just like unpack the prefab. Oh, and sorry, the first thing I'm going to do is move den staging under staging furniture. So now, once it goes up in the visualizer, staging furniture is the object that'll get turned on and off, and all of the furniture beneath it then will go with it, which is how they have it set up to work. Um, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these countertop stools. I'm going to move them to the outer section of the island. Then I'm going to grab the dining set, which is the West Elm table, chair 2. This one, nope, not the armchair. Some of these are grouped together really well in the hierarchy just by default. Some of them are not as much. So, okay, so that's that. Okay, so, oh, and the rug. And I'm going to move this stuff because it's the dining stuff. I'm assuming that's what this space over here is. And then I'm going to move this big piece of art onto the wall. Center it. Center it by the table. Um, and I mean, it's just the fire. Did they mention whether or not the fireplace was going to be something that could be turned on and off? It doesn't
No,
look
I didn't.
like it. It looks like it's just part of the base. Okay. So in that case, what I'm going to do is delete the media console. Oh yeah. So in order to delete individual parts of or reorganize a prefab, you have to unpack the prefab. So I've unpacked it. I'm going to delete that. Just going to stick the TV on top of the mantle. looks good. And I might move the rest of this out a little bit. The couch, sofa, coffee table, side table, lamp, floor lamp. Gonna move that back a little bit. Oh, I need the rug too. And this chair is probably in the right place. They'll probably want it in a corner like that. Put it there. And then there was a poof. Did I delete the poof by mistake? That little ottoman looking thing. Oh no, it's over here. There it is. So they might want that by the chair. And then I'm just gonna move this potted plant to the other side of the fireplace. So that is probably good enough for staging then. And that way, if they want it, it's there. It's going to go into it's inside the staging furniture object. They can just turn it on and off at will. Now, I think where's the other art? I'm just noticing there was an art 1. No, that's art 1. Art 2 is over here. Okay. And it's through the wall. I don't really think art 2 is necessary. I'm going to delete it. But yeah,
Awesome.
okay, so that's furniture.
Cool. Yeah. I did have another question, but honestly, I'll just let you go to the other meeting. I feel like I took way too much of your time.
Oh no, it's fine. It's good to to ask questions if you have them. But yeah, you can ping me. I'll pop into that one. I'm actually not even 100% sure what it's about. I think it's just a sprint planning thing. And I'll if you want to call again afterwards, I'll let you know.
Okay, yeah, I'll use this since we recorded. I'll just use it as a reference and I'll get started on fixing up the issues you told me about. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Logan.
No problem.
All right, man.
All right.
Take it easy.
Bye bye. Yep. Thanks.